Episode 11 of the summer, I Turned Pretty, didn't just give us another chapter in Belly's summer, it gave us an emotional storm filled with love, heartbreak, and choices that could change everything moving forward. Episode 11 feels like the calm after a storm, but at the same time, it hints that the next wave is about to crash. Right from the very first scene, the show makes it clear that this isn't just filler, it's a turning point. Every character is carrying the weight of their past decisions, and every glance, every silence, feels loaded with meaning. That's why this episode demands a full breakdown. Because underneath the romantic drama lies a story about identity, about growing up, and about how we choose who we want to be when the world around us starts changing. To understand episode 11, we first have to look at the setup from episode 10, the tension between Conrad, Jeremiah, and Belly was already boiling over, and the family dynamics were stretched thin. Episode 11 doesn't try to reset or soften those edges instead. It sharpens them. Right away, you sense that the choices these characters make in this episode will ripple far into the season finale. And for fans who have followed this journey, since the very beginning, this episode delivers the kind of emotional payoff we've been waiting for. This is also the episode where the theme of nostalgia versus growth takes center stage. So much of the summer I Turned Pretty has been built on the idea of summers that feel timeless sunsets on the beach, bonfires, and secret moments that never seem to end. But episode 11 reminds us that time does move forward. The characters can't stay frozen in that perfect summer bubble forever. Belly isn't just the girl who fell in love on the beach anymore. She's becoming someone who has to face heartbreak, responsibility, and the reality that her choices matter. And that's what makes this episode so powerful. It's about transition. It's about leaving one version of yourself behind to step into another. What really makes episode 11 stand out is how layered it is. On the surface, yes, it's another chapter in the love triangle saga that has fueled much of the show's drama. But beneath that surface is a deeper story about family grief, about how people handle loss differently, and about how love can heal but also complicate wounds. Every moment of quiet reflection in this episode is as important as the big confrontations. And when you really pay attention, you see the writers setting up emotional beats that will echo in the final episodes of the season. That's why we're going to break this episode down piece by piece. First, we'll walk through the events in detail so you can relive the story beat by beat. Then we'll dig into the analysis, pulling apart what each character's journey means, and how the themes connect to Jenny Han's original books. Finally, we'll end by looking at where this leaves us heading into episode 12. Because trust me, this episode makes sure you're already bracing for what's next. And here's the thing. The Summer I Turned Pretty is more than just a teen romance drama. It has become a cultural moment, especially for people who see their own growing pains mirrored in Belly's. Episode 11 captures that universal feeling of standing between two worlds, the safety of the past and the uncertainty of the future. It's a reminder that summer isn't just about love stories. It's also about endings. And sometimes those endings hurt more than we expect. So as we go into this recap and analysis, keep one question in mind. What does it really mean to turn pretty? The show's title has always been about more than just looks. It's about transformation, about becoming. And episode 11 gives us one of the clearest answers yet. Through Belly's choices, through Conrad's distance, through Jeremiah's vulnerability, we see that turning pretty means stepping into your own truth, no matter how messy or painful that truth may be. This isn't just the story of a summer anymore. It's the story of how a summer can define who you are for the rest of your life. Asterisk. Episode 11 opens with a feeling of hesitation in the air. Like the characters themselves aren't sure how to take the next step. Belly stands at the center of it all, torn between her heart and her head. And the beach house, once a symbol of innocence and joy, feels like a place full of memories she can't escape. Right away, we sense that this episode won't be about sweeping romance. It's about confrontation, choices, and the aftermath of everything that's already happened. The early scenes set the tone. Belly has conversations that feel clipped, almost unfinished, as if words are too fragile to hold the emotions she's carrying. Jeremiah, on the other hand, tries to step forward, desperate to prove that he can be the one she chooses. He wears his emotions on his sleeve, opening himself up in ways that make the audience both root for him and ache for him. And then there's Conrad, quiet, reserved, but always watching. Every time he enters a scene, you feel the air shift. His silence speaks as loudly as Jeremiah's confessions. One of the standout parts of episode 11 is the way it handles family. The Fisher boys aren't just competing for Belly's love, they're also struggling with grief, legacy, and the complicated ways brothers deal with each other when love and loss overlap. There's a dinner scene that perfectly captures this. Tension, the clinking of forks, the forced small talk, the sideways glances that reveal everything unsaid. Belly sits between the brothers, both physically and emotionally caught in the middle. And for the audience, it's clear that this triangle has moved past innocent summer crushes. It's now about deep, life-shaping choices. But the episode doesn't. Drowned in heaviness, it balances the drama with quiet, tender moments. Belly takes a walk by the water, the camera lingering on her face as she reflects. We hear echoes of her memories, the voices of past summers blending into the sound of crashing waves. It's a beautiful reminder of how much she has grown and also how much she's lost. The beach, which once promised endless possibility, now feels like a place of reckoning. Throughout the middle act, episode 11 builds momentum through small confrontations. Jeremiah pulls Belly aside, pressing her to acknowledge what's been between them, not just in this summer, but for years. Conrad, meanwhile, has a one-on-one with Belly that feels both raw and restrained. He wants to protect her, to shield her from the pain he knows all too well, but in doing so, he risks pushing her further away. What makes these moments so powerful is that neither boy is framed as the clear right choice. Instead, the show emphasizes the truth. Love isn't neat, and sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones with no easy answer. A pivotal moment comes about halfway through the episode. Belly finally speaks her truth out loud, not to choose sides, but to acknowledge her own confusion. It's vulnerable, almost uncomfortable to watch, because it mirrors a reality many viewers understand: the fear of hurting someone you care about simply by being honest. This scene anchors the whole episode, because it reminds us that Belly isn't just a prize to be won. She's a person navigating love, loss, and self-discovery in real time. As the episode moves toward its final act, tensions reach their peak. A storm, both literal and metaphorical, rolls in. The crashing rain mirrors the chaos inside the characters' hearts. There's a confrontation between Conrad and Jeremiah that has been brewing all season, and episode 11 finally lets it explode. Words are shouted, accusations fly, and for a moment, it feels like the bond between the brothers might never recover. Belly stands there, caught in the crossfire, realizing that her presence has amplified wounds that already existed. The closing scenes of episode 11 are some of the most haunting of the season. The beach house lights glow against the storm outside and inside. Each character is left in their own corner, reflecting. Belly sits quietly, staring at an old photograph, her expression unreadable. Jeremiah slams a door behind him, frustration carved across his face. Conrad, alone, lets his emotions break through for just a moment, his stoic mask slipping as he whispers words no one else hears. The episode doesn't tie anything up, neatly leaves threads dangling, hearts bruised. And viewers desperate for resolution, episode 11 ends not with answers, but with silence. A lingering shot of Belly walking into the rain closes the chapter, her figure blurred by the storm. It's a metaphor that couldn't be clearer. The future is uncertain, messy, and full of choices that will define everything to come. For fans, it's the perfect cliffhanger, because it doesn't just make you wonder who Belly will choose, it makes you wonder who she will become. Asterisk. Episode 11 isn't just a continuation of the love triangle, it's a mirror held up to the characters, forcing them to confront who they are and who they want to be. Beneath the surface drama, this episode is about change. It's about stepping into adulthood even when you're not ready, and about realizing that love is rarely as simple as it looks in daydreams. Let's start with Belly's arc. She has spent much of the season pulled in two directions, but in episode 11, her struggle becomes less about who do I choose, and more about who am I when I choose. That distinction matters. Belly is no longer the wide-eyed girl enjoying a magical summer. She's someone who has to face the consequences of being in the middle of two brothers, each carrying their own pain. When she admits her confusion out loud, it's one of the most honest moments in the series so far. She isn't indecisive for the sake of drama, she's human, caught between love, loyalty, and her own identity. The writers highlight this beautifully by giving her moments of solitude, especially by the water, where the audience can see that she's searching for more than romance. She's searching for clarity about who she is becoming. Now, if we look at Conrad, his character continues to embody restraint. He is someone who feels deeply, but expresses sparingly. Episode 11 peels back another layer of his guarded personality, showing us glimpses of vulnerability, but also reminding us that his way of protecting others often means shutting them out. His interactions with Belly reveal that he's not just scared of losing her, he's scared of opening up in a way that makes him feel weak. The silence, the half-finished sentences, the distance he creates are not signs of indifference. They are signs of fear. This episode emphasizes that Conrad's love is deep, but it's also tangled with grief and guilt, making it hard for him to give Belly the kind of openness she craves. On the other side is Jeremiah, who represents the opposite energy. If Conrad is the storm that brews quietly until it crashes, Jeremiah is the summer sunwarm, direct, and unafraid to shine. In episode 11, he pushes harder than ever for Belly to see him as her future. His vulnerability is on full display, and that courage to speak his feelings makes him appealing, even when his desperation risks overwhelming the situation. The tension between the brothers crystallizes in this episode because they embody two very different approaches to love. Conrad's cautious distance versus Jeremiah's passionate honesty. Neither is portrayed as fully right or wrong. Instead, the show uses their contrast to explore how love itself can take many forms, and how different people express it differently. Beyond the triangle, episode 11 is also about family and grief. The Fisher brothers aren't just fighting over Belly, they're still navigating the loss of their mother and what her absence means in their lives. That dinner scene, with its uneasy silence, shows how grief doesn't always come in loud sobs. Sometimes it lives in the spaces between words, in the way people avoid eye contact, or in how they hold on to traditions because letting them go would feel like letting go of her memory. The beach house itself becomes a character here, holding the weight of summer's past while also pushing the characters into an uncertain future. A recurring theme of transition runs through the entire episode. We see it symbolized in the storm that arrives toward the end, reflecting the chaos inside the characters. We see it in Belly's walks along the beach, where the waves that once promised freedom now feel like reminders of change. The show, cleverly, uses these natural symbol storms, waves, sunsets, to mirror the internal storms of its characters. This is what elevates the series beyond just a love story. It's not only about who ends up with whom, it's about how growing up is never clean, and how every choice shapes the person you become. One of the more subtle but powerful elements in episode 11 is the use of silence and space. Characters often pause, hesitate, or leave conversations unfinished. In a lesser show, that might feel frustrating, but here, it feels real. Because in real life, the hardest things to say often remain unspoken. The writers lean into this truth, making viewers sit with the discomfort, and in doing so, they make the emotions feel authentic. When you connect this episode back to Jenny Han's original books, you notice both parallels and departures. The themes of love, growth, and family remain faithful, but the show takes liberties in how it stages the conflicts, especially between Conrad and Jeremiah. By expanding these confrontations, the series emphasizes that this isn't just Belly's story, it's also about the brothers and how their relationship to each other is forever changed by the presence of love and grief colliding. Fans of the books will recognize the essence of the story, but the show breathes new life into it by slowing down and letting the emotional beats play out. In the end, Episode 11's biggest theme is Belly is becoming someone new, Conrad. Is becoming someone who must decide whether silence protects or destroys, and Jeremiah is becoming someone willing to risk it all for love. Each character is stepping across an invisible line from who they were into who they will be, and that's why this episode feels so heavy, because change always carries both promise and loss. Episode 11 reminds us that love isn't just about happy endings. It's about the messy, painful, and beautiful process of growing up. And sometimes, turning pretty means learning that the choices we make can hurt the people we love most. Asterisk as Episode 11 fades out. One thing becomes clear. This wasn't just a mid-season filler. It was the emotional anchor of Season 3. The episode that reshaped everything we thought we knew about Belly, Conrad, and Jeremiah. Watching it feels like standing on the edge of a cliff, staring at the horizon, knowing a storm is rolling in you. Don't know exactly how hard it will hit, but you know it's coming. That's the brilliance of Episode 11. It doesn't resolve. It unsettles. It doesn't give us peace. It leaves us restless. That's exactly why it works. When we step back and look at the big picture, the episode's impact becomes even clearer. For Belly, Episode 11 is a breaking point. Up until now, she has drifted between her feelings for both brothers, carried along by the tide of memories, promises, and what-ifs. But this episode forces her to recognize that standing in the middle has consequences. The storm outside mirrors the storm inside her heart, and by the end, she seems to realize that no matter what choice she makes, someone will be hurt. That awareness, painful as it is, what shows us that Belly is no longer the innocent girl of past summers. She is becoming someone who understands the weight of her decisions. For Conrad and Jeremiah, Episode 11 shifts their story from rivalry to fracture. Yes, they are brothers. Yes, they share history, loss, and love. But this episode proves that love, especially romantic love, can divide as much as it unites. The confrontation between them is raw, explosive, and impossible to take back. Even if Belly were to step aside, the scars left by their fight would remain. And that's what makes the coming finale so tense. It's not just about who ends up with Belly. It's about whether the brothers themselves can survive this triangle without losing each other for good. Now, when we talk about what's next, we can only imagine how Episode 12 will unfold. But Episode 11 gives us plenty of hints. The silence at the end, the way Belly walks into the storm, the broken expressions on Conrad and Jeremiah's face, is all of it points to a finale that won't be about easy answers. Instead, it will be about truth. The truth of who Belly really loves. The truth of whether Conrad can open up before it's too late. The truth of whether Jeremiah's vulnerability is enough to hold Belly's heart. And maybe most importantly, the truth of what family means when love threatens to tear it apart. Another layer that Episode 11 sets up beautifully is the theme of endings. Summers, no matter how magical, always end. Once filled with laughter is now filled with echoes. The traditions that felt timeless are slipping away. The series has always hinted at this, but Episode 11 makes it unavoidable. This summer, this chapter is closing, and Episode 12 will likely decide not just the future of Belly's love life, but the future of her friendships, her family ties, and even the very meaning of Cousins Beach. For fans who've read Jenny Han's books, Episode 11 feels like a respectful nod to the original story, but with fresh twists that keep us guessing. The show doesn't just copy the page, it adapts, expands, and sometimes surprises us with emotional beats that feel more raw, more cinematic. And that means heading into Episode 12, even book readers can't be entirely sure what's coming. That uncertainty is part of the thrill. So where does this leave us? With hearts aching, with questions burning, and with a finale that promises both heartbreak and resolution, will Belly finally choose once and for all? Or will she step back to find herself before choosing anyone? Will Conrad find the courage to speak his feelings openly, or will silence cost him everything? Will Jeremiah's openness win the day, or will it expose a deeper truth Belly isn't ready to face? These are the questions episode 11 plants in our minds, and they are the very questions that will carry us into the season's final chapter. And now comes the part where we, as viewers, take a step back and reflect. Why does this show, and especially this episode, resonate so much? Because it isn't just about love, it's about growing up. It's about the messy middle ground between childhood and adulthood, when the people you love most can also be the ones who hurt you. It's about the bittersweet truth that summers end, but the lessons they leave behind last forever. Why the Summer I Turned. It has become more than a show, it's a story that so many people see themselves in. Episode 11 will be remembered as one of the most defining episodes of the series. Not because it gave us closure, but because it gave us reflection. It held up a mirror and forced us to see that love is complicated, grief is heavy, and growing up means making choices that don't always feel fair. So as we wait for episode 12, one thing is certain. Whatever happens next, nothing will be the same. The summer may be turning pretty, but it's also turning painful, turning complicated, and turning real. And maybe that's the truest part of all.